My daughter Lily started talking about her new best friend Casey a few months back. She's been so lonely since we moved. When my husband Raul and I realized that Casey was imaginary, we figured it was just a coping mechanism. Lily is also 5, so we weren't too worried. In fact, before Casey showed up, Lily was convinced there was a monster under her bed. She never mentioned a monster at our old house, so we thought it may have been related to the move, resuming kindergarten in a new place, etc. We would crawl under the bed and show her that nothing was there, but none of that helped. We'd just sit with her until she fell asleep. One day, she just started mentioning Casey out of the blue, and that Casey kept the monster away so she could go to bed all by herself now. Yes, I was grateful, but I was also proud that she imagined someone, to protect her from her own fears. I asked her what Casey looked like over breakfast one morning, and she basically described a character from her favorite TV show. She then casually added between bites of toast, "She has scary fingers and teeth, but she's really nice." She sounds nice. I'm glad you have her. Oh yes, me too. She looked at me conspiratorially. She ate the monster. It was gross. I didn't really think much about her comment at the time, because kids can say some weird things. Not long after, she started talking about Casey. Our cat, Taters, went missing. He was happy, healthy, and had never been much of a roamer before. So Raul and I had a bad feeling, but we kept searching for him. We weren't even sure how we got out of the house. Lily became quieter and more withdrawn after that. We figured she missed Taters on top of all the changes in her life recently. I heard her yelling in her room once, but when I ran in to check on her, there was no one else there. She asked if she could eat in her room with Casey. She started wanting to eat most of her meals and snacks in her room by herself. I could hear her muffled voice talking to Casey, I presumed. She later asked if I could add more meat to each meal. It was fine at first. I figured that may have been her way of dealing with the fact that our searches for Tater were not going well, coupled with a new home and school in a new state. But then, it became every single meal. Every plate came back empty. But once school ended and she wasn't taking lunch and snacks to school anymore, Lily started looking noticeably thinner and more anxious. We started to seriously worry about our daughter's mental health and her eating habits. We wanted to watch her, make sure she was actually eating. I was also worried that if she was eating and still losing weight, she might be sick. I told her she needed to eat at the table with the family again, and to my surprise, she looked scared. She whispered, "Can I take a plate back for Casey too?" I looked at my husband, shrugged, and he shrugged back. "Sure, honey." The sheer relief on her face at that moment should have told me something. She slowly gained weight back, seemed happier than ever. The second plate she took to her room always came back clean. I was at first worried that she was now eating 2 plates of food at each meal, but she seemed healthy enough. My husband mentioned that he noticed we had more raccoons around lately than when we first moved in. We wondered if maybe Lily was sneaking the extra food outside by herself. We hoped not, since we lived in a wooded area, or was even dumping it out our bedroom window, which could explain the increasing number of raccoons. Not too long ago, Raul and I decided that he'd visit his mother and brother for 2 weeks, and bringing Lily so she could visit family and friends. since he's a teacher and they are both off for the summer. I had some major work projects coming up, so I figured I'd stay and get some me time. I kissed my husband as I helped him load their bags into his car, pulled Lily into a hug and spun her around. She giggled. I told her to make sure Daddy doesn't drive too fast. Raoul stuck his tongue out at us at that. As we said our goodbyes, she looked more serious than I had ever seen her before. "Wait, Mommy. Make sure you feed Casey, do you promise?" "Of course, baby." "No, Mom, she gets very hungry. I need you to promise. It's very important." I promised her I would. She smiled like a weight had been lifted off her shoulders as we buckled her into her seat in the back with her favorite stuffed animals. "I'll call if Taters comes home while you're gone." Lily stared at me. I corrected myself when he comes home. Her only response was, "Mommy, don't forget." I didn't intentionally break my promise. I just got caught up in work, and without Raoul or Lily there, I forgot about lunch and dinner entirely the first day. I thought I had heard a low growl coming from her room around noonish, but I was so engrossed in the code I was finishing up for work. When I finally got everything running error-free, I was in a great mood. My neck and shoulders were stiff from staring at the screen for hours on end without moving. I looked at the clock and it was 2 a.m. I grabbed a protein bar off my desk and felt a sense of tired excitement. I was snapped out of it when I heard what sounded like another growl coming from Lily's bedroom, followed by chewing, tearing at something, like a wild animal. I paused. "Hello?" The noise stopped. I heard what sounded like scurrying across the carpet in her room. I cracked the door open. Her room was empty, although I did notice a faint breeze. The window was open a bit and the carpet below it was muddy. I tried to remember if I had left it open. Had I missed the mud before? I honestly couldn't remember because of how tired I was at the time. I crossed the room and closed it. The next morning, I texted Raoul a picture of 2 small omelets I had made. I figured I'd feed Casey for lunch. Ask Lily where I should put Casey's. He wrote back, "She says under the bed," with a shrug emoji. I thought that was weird, but I figured why not? I'd put the plate under there, snap a picture to send, and stick it in the fridge for later. I lifted the frilly bed skirt, placed the plate under, and took a picture. As I went to send it to my husband, I noticed the flash had picked up something white, just off screen. I looked under the bed for feathers. I reached under the bed, leaning under further. One of her pillows was under the bed, torn to shreds. Once I had more of my body under the bed, I could see that near the pillow were old stains and one that was still drying. I was guessing from Lily sliding food under her bed and spilling it. I cropped the stain and pillow remnants out of the picture and sent it. I added a note to my husband. "Hey, do raccoons ever come indoors, like through an open window?" While I was waiting for him to respond, I picked up the plate to stick it in the fridge. As I closed the door behind me, I swear I heard a hiss. The day was filled with meetings, so I just ate the second omelet while I worked. Raoul called me apologetically around 4. He sounded tired. "Hey, sorry babe, I hate to bug you while you're working, but Lily will literally not stop asking me if you brought lunch to Casey yet, since you didn't send a picture." I smiled to myself. I guess after the omelets, I've committed myself to making 2 plates and taking pictures of each meal until you get back. He laughed. "Sorry, Beth." I talked to Lily, told her I missed her and loved her, and lied and said I was feeding Casey since she seemed so worried. I said I just forgot to take pictures. "Honey, can you put Daddy back on?" He took the phone back from her, we talked about his family, the old neighborhood a bit, and then he asked, "Oh, what was up with your raccoon question earlier? Did one get in?" I told him I wasn't sure and tried to explain over the sound of laughing kids talking loudly on his end. He thought for a moment. "Yeah, they can get in if any windows are open, even a few inches. But if you see it, please don't approach it. Call animal control." I felt an unexplainable wave of relief wash over me. Clearly it was the raccoons, and that made sense. It was logical. I liked when things made sense. Clearly Casey wasn't real because that was absurd. We ended the phone call and said our goodbyes. I made dinner, a salad. I was taking advantage of being home alone and making whatever I wanted for dinner, so I was eating less carbs and meat than usual. Snapped a picture, but I definitely was not leaving a plate in a room all night if raccoons were already getting into the house. As soon as I took the picture, I took the second plate to the fridge again. I locked her bedroom window for good measure. I sat down to eat, had a fairly uneventful evening of TV and crocheting, until I walked past Lily's room to head to bed. I heard the same noises as last time, but louder, more aggressive, and this time, something I can only describe as a slurping crunching sound. I tried not to picture the wild animals likely thrashing around her room. I couldn't understand how they got in again. Maybe they never left the night before and I locked them inside by accident. I felt terrible but took Raoul's advice not to approach them and left the door closed. By morning, it was quiet, so I cautiously opened the door, a bowl of oatmeal in my hand, prepared to complete the picture ritual. I gasped. Her room was a mess. I'd expected some mess based on the sounds, but not to this extent. The window was still closed. Her stuffed animals were all over the floor. Some were ripped. There were deep slash marks in portions of the carpet and bloody drag marks leading to under her bed, where splatters arched out from. Were there several of them? Had they been fighting under there? I took in a few deep breaths, cautiously lifted what was left of the bed skirts, and instantly wished I hadn't. Something was under there, torn apart, partially eaten. It was bigger than the raccoons I had seen. I tried to keep my own oatmeal down, dropped the second bowl and ran. I called my husband from the kitchen, panicking. He said that he would come home early, but I didn't want to alarm Lily or have either of them miss out on time with his family. He reluctantly agreed and he asked one of our neighbors, Steve, who came by to help me an hour or so later. "Jesus," Steve whispered, covering his nose and mouth with the back of his gloved hand. He moved the empty bowl of oatmeal aside and told me I could leave if I wanted, while he went under and pulled out whatever it was, that he'd help me clean up. I told him I'd stay and help, but I turned my back to him for a moment before we got started to compose myself. Something else caught my eye. Bloody smears on the interior side of the windowsill. As I walked closer to inspect, I saw child-sized bloody palm prints on the inside, bloody smudges on the locks. I excused myself and texted Raoul, trying to come across casual in tone despite my shaking hands. "Can you ask Lily what happens if she doesn't feed Casey?" After a long while, he wrote me back. She got really upset, so I'm not really sure. I let it go because I didn't want to upset her more. Steve and I finished up. Later, he and his wife came and helped me take the carpet out of Lily's bedroom. Luckily, there was hardwood underneath, though we couldn't get out the stains that had soaked through. I've been trying to replace her sheets and toys. In the meantime, I've been making sure to feed Casey. But I think something's changed since I forgot. Even though I've been bringing her 3 healthy meals a day for a week, and she's been eating them, I keep hearing sounds and sometimes finding more messes in Lily's room. The raccoons disappeared. I stopped seeing signs of them near the garbage, and the surrounding woods are silent. I've talked to Raul, and even though we haven't said out loud to each other that whatever is under our daughter's bed is the cause, we know something is very wrong here. We've been browsing and sending each other links to homes for sale in the next town over. Steve had been helping me clean up, but I'm not sure he believed me when I tried explaining about Casey, and he probably thinks I'm crazy. He was going to come by yesterday, never did, and hasn't come since. I called his house, but his wife says she hasn't seen him since he headed this direction yesterday afternoon. I'm appreciative of all the help he gave me already, and understand if he and his wife need a break from this. I just wish they'd tell me that instead of avoiding me. I need advice. What else can I do? I'm worried because Lily and Raul come home in 2 days, and things with Casey are not going well. I had started locking the door to our bedroom each night after we ripped out the carpet, and last night, I swear something tried to open it.